So the theme for this weekend is about effort and how to apply effort in a skillful way. And just to recap a couple of the principal points that I was making yesterday, oftentimes we hear Buddhist teachings, and there's a lot about, say, training the mind, or working with the capacities that we have to become peaceful, to become concentrated, to develop insight. And it can seem like that when we engage in doing any kind of goal-oriented activity, then it becomes very stressful. I've got to do this, I've got to get rid of that, I've got to be this way, I shouldn't be that way. So it can come across that even the work of meditation and developing peacefulness is stressful. And it can be also just in our general way of life that any kind of doing, any kind of work or activity, any undertaking is seen as stressful, and peace is what we might experience when the doing is over. Similarly, we can think, well, I want to be peaceful, and so any kind of desiring or any kind of goal-directedness, any kind of aim is necessarily not spiritual, or sort of getting in the way of true peace. Therefore, peace means not doing, not engaging, so dissociating from things, or just switching off. And these are sweeping statements, and probably a number of you don't think that way, but these are often, say, mental habits that we have, and tendencies that we incline towards without realizing it. So what I was presenting yesterday, and we'll sort of develop more today, as a theme, is how effort can be made, direction can be given, that is completely in accordance with peacefulness, with clarity, with qualities that are liberating. And that we should note that the Buddha spoke in terms of a path, the Eightfold Path. It's a path heading in a particular direction, and the direction is the ending of dukkha, the freedom of the heart, what we call enlightenment or liberation. So there's a path and there's a goal, and so that is something that we need to be taking into account, and that it's not an accident that the Buddha spoke in that way, and that we are, say, taking this opportunity to discover what the Buddha meant, or how he was using language to, say, help people to arrive at that quality of enlightenment, liberation, and that that also by seeing that the exercising of effort, the doing of work, having a direction, and so on and so forth, there has to be a way that's in accordance with truth. It's in accordance with peace. Otherwise, right effort, samma vayama, or balanced effort, could not be a part of the Eightfold Path. So that there must be some way that the way that we work, the way that we do things, engaging in activity and decision-making, goal-directedness, there has to be a way that isn't stressful, but rather that is something that can be done with an attitude of peacefulness and clarity, and that peace doesn't just depend on switching off or not feeling, or not experiencing. It's not that peace doesn't come from an absence of irritation or activity. Peace comes from, I would say, an attuned understanding, a right attitude, right understanding, and a way of holding the field of experience in a skillful fashion. So that is, say, the basic outline of the theme for this weekend, and hopefully what was presented yesterday, the kind of practices we did together, that's something that is helpful, beneficial, or for those who are participating. And I'll try to extend that a bit more today, and particularly talking about the quality of balance, and how to balance effort, not trying too hard, or not trying hard enough, or trying in a way that is not stressful, rather is invigorating and liberating. Maybe one of the first things to say about balance is that even though it's a word, balance is a word, and we have a concept of what it means, the actuality of balance, it's not an idea, it's not just a piece of information, it's like a whole body learning, a whole being learning. So you can't learn to ride a bicycle by reading a book about it. You can't learn to swim or walk a tightrope by reading a book about it. You've actually got to get on the bicycle and make the effort. You've got to get in the water and get wet to learn how to swim. You actually got to step out onto a wire to learn how to tightrope, to walk the tightrope. So that the idea is one thing, but the actuality of balance, it's a non-conceptual, non-verbal quality. It's a whole, like with riding a bicycle, it's a whole body learning. Certainly, a book can give you some ideas about it, or someone can who's helping you can say some words, but there has to be a way that the entire system is brought into play. And so with the quality of balance, I want to bring across, my aim today is to bring across that principle that it's not just about an idea of say weighing up different mental qualities against each other, but getting a feel for how they work together. And then just like riding a bicycle or swimming or walking on a tightrope, getting the feel for what is that quality of balance and integration, and what is, say, what's out of balance. So we get to know that not just as a set of concepts or kind of lists of words in English or Pali, but rather there's a feel for it, that kind of non-conceptual and whole body learning in relationship to that. One of the interesting teachings on this area about skillful effort is that actually the very first sutta in the connected discourses, what's called the Samyutta Nikaya. So sutta number one, chapter 1, there is a conversation between the Buddha and a deva. And the deva asks the Buddha, how was it that you crossed the flood? How was it you got from the shore of samsara, of confusion and difficulty and alienation? How did you get from the shore of samsara across the flood to the shore of nibbana, to peacefulness and to freedom? How did you cross the flood? So the imagery is out of crossing a large river. And then the Buddha responded by saying, when I pressed forward, when I pushed hard, then I got swept away by the current. When I stood still, when I didn't make any effort, then I sank. He said, by neither pressing forward nor by stopping still, that's how I crossed the flood. He doesn't give much more explanation than that in that sutta, but I feel it gives a helpful image. It's by neither trying too hard nor not trying hard enough, and also in a way letting go of that. I should be this way, I shouldn't be that way. But actually getting a feel for the situation. That's how the Buddha crossed the flood. So that's, if you want to look that up in the suttas, it's right at the very beginning, chapter 1, page 1 of the connected discourses. But in terms of finding a balance, then there's a number of lists of qualities that the Buddha outlined that I felt it would be helpful, interesting to introduce, to talk about today. And the first of these is called the 5 spiritual faculties. And in terms of how we make effort, how we direct the mind, how we inform the choices that we make, how we frame our experience of the world, these 5 qualities are very significant. So these are called, in Pali, the 5 indriya, known as the 5 spiritual faculties. And the image of a bird is often used to describe these qualities and how they work together. So the 5 in a list are faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Those are the 5. And the imagery of a bird is that at the center you have mindfulness, sati. That's like the body of the bird at the very center. And then the 2 wings on either side, you have qualities that are in pairs. So the first pair are faith and wisdom. They're sort of out on the outlying pair. And then the inner pair are energy and concentration. and then it's mindfulness that is right there in the center. And I'll talk more about mindfulness later on in the day if everything works out okay. I've had a little bit of computer dukkha here, so I'm speaking through an iPad this morning, but the Amaravati tech department are doing their best to sort of get everything back functioning in an efficient way. So I'll carry on with this mode for the time being. I might change to a different mode later on this morning. Anyway, so employing my spiritual faculties, I had faith that the IT department would be able to do something, but the wisdom to know it's not necessarily the case. But anyway, I see my main computer is seeming to come alive in the background. So the quality of mindfulness is what is it's the overseeing, the watchful element that is noticing what's going on and how things are working together. So that's like the body of the bird, the life source of the bird is right there at the center. Is this quality of mindfulness, of sati, and that is what is recognizing what's going on and how things are working. And so that is the kind of the governing or the regulating element is mindfulness. So with faith and wisdom as a pair, then faith in Buddhism doesn't mean belief. It doesn't mean sort of filling up the unknown with a belief or an opinion or but rather it's more to do with the quality of confidence and being ready to sort of step forward into the unknown, or like using the imagery of riding a bicycle. It's okay, just like climbing on the bicycle and recognizing, okay, I think I can do this, or I hope I can learn how to do this. Let's give it a try and see how things go. So saddha, or faith, is that readiness to face the unknown with an open heart. And then panya, or wisdom, that's the discerning faculty that is recognizing, okay, how is this done? Okay, where do I put my hands? Okay, hands on the handlebars. What do I do with my feet? The feet go on the pedals. Okay, now I'm not going to be able to do anything until somebody's given me a bit of guidance. So then I ask the person who's teaching me, okay, now how do I do this? What do I do first? Do I move my left foot or my right foot, or what's the way to operate this? So when faith and wisdom are well balanced, then they inform each other. So faith is that quality of trust or confidence, that readiness to go into the unknown, and wisdom in this respect, that is the kind of discerning, exploring. Okay, how does this work? What's going on here? What's the right way to understand this, or have I got everything that I need to know in relationship to this particular task, this particular effort? And so when they get out of balance, where there's too much faith and not enough wisdom, then we can be overconfident, or think, I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. Or it can be a kind of credulousness. Well, the Ajahn said this, so it must be true. Or I read it in a book. I saw it on the internet. I saw this YouTube video about it, and it told me such and such. And so if it was on the internet, it must be true. And that kind of credulousness, believing too easily, or going along with what we hear, or what we think, or our habits, without in an overly trusting, an unthoughtful, a reckless way, like the word wreck. We don't use wreck, we use in English very often, but it means like it comes from the same root as to reckon, or to measure, to consider. So when we're reckless, or when we have too much faith, not enough wisdom, then we are, not looking where we're going, or we're not receiving advice or input. So we can be believing too easily and be motivated without thoughtfulness. Too much of the wisdom faculty and not enough faith, then the mind goes towards being lost in conceptualization, thinking things through. I need more information. I've got to have every detail. I need to read books about riding a bicycle, or I need to read at least 4 or 5 books about how to swim before I get in the water. Like the mind is getting drawn into conceptualization and losing track of what the task actually is. So when there's too much of the wisdom side and not enough faith, then we get lost in conceptualization. So that when they are, and it's the quality of mindfulness or sati at the center, which helps those two to be balanced. We can get a feeling for, I'm being too trusting, or I'm being too credulous, or that I need to ramp up the investigation and the quality of consideration and the conceptual side, or I'm getting too conceptual, I'm getting lost in theory. I don't really need to have so much information. I think I know enough to get going. So okay, let's get on the bicycle and try it out, or let's get in the water and start splashing and seeing how this works. So that the quality of mindfulness is what's reckoning when things are out of balance, and then also it's that source of attunement that is able to recognize, okay, now this is working, or yeah, I'm beginning to get the hang of it. Okay, this feels like a good direction. Let's keep going in this way. So that in terms of how to inform the effort that we make, then those two, having the faith element and the wisdom element integrated in a balanced way, having those tips of the wings coordinated, is extremely important. The other two, energy and concentration, virya and samadhi in the Pali language, these are equally important to balance. So virya is that sense of engagement, energy. That is a very sort of direct translation from the Pali. That quality of vitality or alertness, the energy in the mind, and so that needs to be balanced with concentration. Concentration is the ability to pay attention to a single object, to pay attention to the present moment, and to be focusing on that in a stable and well balanced, well considered way. So if we have too much energy and not enough concentration, then the mind veers towards restlessness. There's the kind of agitation. There's a lot of energy. The mind is very alert, but you can't sit still. The mind is prone to chasing off after our thoughts or sounds that we hear or memories, ideas. The body is tending towards being stressed and tense, and there's a quality of busyness, a stressfulness in the whole inclination of the mind and the body. So too much concentration and not enough energy, then the mind is focused, but it can become extremely dull. So that yes, the attention is on a single point, but the level of brightness can have dimmed quite considerably. And yesterday we were talking about these how to work with, one of the questions, how to work with dullness in meditation. So that is often the case. You can be quite concentrated, but the mind can be very, very dull. Like when you have a torch and the battery is running down, and so you've got one little spot of light right in the middle, and you can still see a little bit. There's still a bit of light coming from the torch, but essentially it's reduced to a very, very small spot. You can see clearly, but it's a very small area, and the rest is all in darkness. And so that is a very common experience in meditation. So too much concentration, not enough energy. The samadhi and the virya are out of balance with each other. And again, some of the meditation guidance I was giving yesterday was around integrating the qualities of energy and alertness, and so that the mind is bright and awake, but also there's a quality of ease and relaxation, a settledness that's there in the body and in the mind as well. And once again, it's the element of mindfulness that's like right at the center. That's the body of the bird, and it's recognizing, that I feel very peaceful. The mind seems to be quite steady, but that strange sound that I'm hearing, that's actually me snoring. So that this is peaceful, but it's a switched off peacefulness, and it's not very bright, not very alert. Similarly, yeah, the mind is really really bright, really agitated, really kind of attentive, fully awake, but it's buzzing around all over the place. It's not settling on a single object. It's very agitated and say distracted. You're pulled apart in different directions. So the quality of mindfulness is recognizing, okay, there needs to be more energy or less energy, more concentration, less concentration, and it's a natural process, so that mindfulness isn't a calculation. It's not a how many more units of concentration do I need, how many units of energy do I need to sort of drop down. It's not a calculation like with riding a bicycle or learning to swim. You're not calculating it. It's a quality of feeling. It's a whole body learning, and so that aspect of balance, it's informed by mindfulness. So it's not just an idea or naming, or there's too much of this or too much and not enough of that. There's too much faith and not enough wisdom, or too much wisdom, too much conceptualizing and not enough trust. It's not just the idea of those, but the feeling of that. And the more that mindfulness is developed, the more that quality of feeling, that heartful attunement. So in a way, along with mindfulness, we can also call it heartfulness. That there's a heartful attunement, a full appreciation of the time, the place, the situation, and so then it's much more unforced. There doesn't even have to be a naming of, oh, I'm too busy, or I'm very sleepy. Without even naming it, it's like you know what to do. You know the adjustments to make. Just like someone who's an accomplished swimmer, or someone who's like an Olympic bicycle rider, they don't have to be thinking about what they're doing. They're kind of, the body knows what to do. They're so used to being on a bicycle, or so used to being in the water. The whole system is very familiar with that environment and knows exactly how to do things in the most effective and well integrated way. So that's one model that I wanted to present this morning. And another model that relates to balance. The Buddha was very, very gifted, not just of making lists, but also of coming up with graphic images. So he didn't actually name the bird imagery with respect to the five indriya. At least I'm not aware that he did. I don't think he did. That's more sort of within the forest tradition. Meditation teachers often use that as a way of talking about the five spiritual faculties. But he did use this other image of a bonfire, looking after a bonfire, to talk about the balancing and integrating of spiritual qualities. So the framework here is a little bit different, and this is the framework of what's called the 7 factors of enlightenment. So when the mind is fully awake, fully aware, then these 7 qualities are present. And so to go through the list, the 7 are, first on the list in this instance is mindfulness. So mindfulness is number 1. Number 2 is investigation of reality, Dhammavicaya in Pali. So that's number 2 is in that investigation. Yesterday I was talking about wise reflection a lot. That's very, very similar to investigation. They're almost synonymous. They're almost the same thing. So that number 2 on the list is investigation of reality. Then the third one is energy again, that virya, that sort of a brightness and alert, energized quality of mind. And then the fourth one is rapture, so that joyfulness, and that energy is got the emotional tone, if you like, of that energy, which is joyful, it's enthusiastic, as a kind of a delight in that the presence of that energy. So it's not just being alert; it's actually enjoying. The joyfulness is there as part of the mix. Then the fifth one is tranquility or calmness, a settledness called pasadhi. So that calmness. Then the sixth one is concentration, samadhi. So there's again, there's some overlap with the five spiritual faculties. You got energy and concentration are in the list as well. And then the last one, the seventh of the seven, is serenity or equanimity, upekkha. So again, you won't be tested on this, but just to sort of put these together. So you in this instance, we got mindfulness. Sati is number one on the list, and then you have the three energizing factors. So investigation, energy, and rapture or joy. Those are the three energizing factors. And then the next three are the calming factors, passaddhi, so calmness, concentration, and serenity. So they're the settling or calming factors. So the image that the Buddha gave with respect to these aspects of the seven factors of enlightenment is that of looking after a bonfire. He said, so when we look after a bonfire, then if the fire is just getting going, the flames are very small, it's a little bit smoky. He said, yeah, if the fire is not fully developed, then is it sensible to put on wet leaves, to sprinkle it with earth, or to sprinkle water on it? And then the members of the Sangha gathered there said, no, it's not, because if the fire hasn't really got going and you put on wet leaves and you sprinkle it with earth and you sprinkle water on it, then it's going to damp it down. He says, so similarly, when the mind is sluggish, when it's dull, we don't need the calming factors. We don't need things to sort of to make it quieter. If your mind is already dull, if there's not much, if the batteries are kind of have run down in your torch, you don't need to put in another set of old batteries or even older batteries. Rather, you need to use the energizing factors. So if the bonfire is just getting going, it's barely alight, you put on dry grass, you put on dry twigs, you blow on it, you ramp up the element of dryness, and you give it more oxygen, so the fire will catch and the bonfire will grow up to a good size, and the fire will burn in an efficient and helpful way. Then he said, similarly, if you have got a fire that's blazing away and is already a bit bigger than you can control, and is kind of already raging, is it sensible to put on dry twigs, dry grass, and to blow on it? And they said, well, no, Venerable Sir, it's not. Because if you do that, then it's really going to get out of control. So if the system is already energized, it's already very agitated and active, you don't need Dhammavijaya and more and energy and rapture. Rather, you need calmness, concentration, and equanimity. Those are the things that will cool it down. So that if the fire is really raging and blasting away, then you sprinkle some water on it, you put on some wet leaves, you sprinkle it with some earth, and it brings the fire down to a much more controllable and balanced level. And so he uses this imagery of looking after a bonfire as to how to work with the mind. And again, it's mindfulness is the thing that's recognizing, whoa, this fire is really out of control. Okay, leave the dry wood and the twigs aside. Let's get some wet leaves, put that on, and damp it down a bit. That's what's needed to bring things more into balance. Or like, well, this fire is really, it needs to get going. It's hardly burning at all. Okay, blow on it, get some dry grass, kind of get that to catch, get some flames going, and we can liven it up. So this image of the bonfire, tending the bonfire, I feel is very, very helpful, and that along the way, because what happens with meditation, and many of you are probably extremely familiar with this, is you can say, well, this is what I do to meditate, and I'm following my routine, and I sit down, close my eyes, and this is the track that I follow. And we can not be paying attention to the fact that we're falling asleep. 3 minutes after we close our eyes, then we've basically switched off, and we're not connected with the mind or what's going on. Or it can be that yes, this is the track that we follow, where we sit down and we spend half the time opening our eyes, checking the clock, and so waiting for the meditation to be over, so that we can follow particular tracks just out of force of habit, or even a sense of duty. Okay, the teacher told me to do it this way, I do it the way the teacher told me. This is how I've been practicing for 20 years, therefore it must be right. And so, and I'm speaking from personal experience here as well, not just sort of saying other people are like this, but we can get into a rut. We just get into a familiar, say, routine, and we can just follow along. So going through the motions of meditation, sitting down, closing our eyes, sort of doing the practice, quote unquote, and not having that quality of wise reflection, consideration. And that's where the element of mindfulness comes in. Say, okay, how is this going? What's the result of this? Is this working? I have been very faithfully and patiently been doing this for 20 years. What's the result? Okay, I don't want to be disrespectful for the teacher. I don't want to go against the instructions that I have faith in, but am I being, again, going back to the image of the balancing of faith and wisdom? Okay, am I being too trusting here? Maybe I should have more discrimination. And yeah, I trust the words of the teacher. I trust the instructions that I followed. Yeah, I'm taking that as being true. Why do I think that's true? What's the result of following those instructions? Is it working? And so say, bringing that quality of the sort of examination and exploring, and then letting the system adjust, being guided by that sort of overarching attunement to the situation, how things are working, and rather than just following the instructions and blindly assuming they must be giving me the right results, that to say, well, is this working? What's the result of it? Is this actually liberating? Is this actually helpful? Is this enabling me to be more peaceful, more free, and more awake in my life? Is this helping me to get along with other people in a better way? What's the result of this? So with respect to that side of it, then the Buddha said that this quality of mindfulness, actually in the commentary to this sutta, in the commentary it says that mindfulness, like just as salt improves the flavor of every curry, and I appreciate that people might have issues with with using salt in your cooking, but this is the commentary. This is how the commentary phrases it. Just as salt improves the flavor of every curry, and just as a skilled government minister improves the well-being of the nation, so too mindfulness is useful in all situations. So sometimes the energizing factors are helpful, sometimes they're not helpful. Sometimes the calming factors are helpful, sometimes they're not helpful. But mindfulness is always helpful. So that's one of those situations where more is better in terms of mindfulness and what it contributes to the whole system. Mindful that my mouth is getting dry with all this talking. So then, with respect to mindfulness, then maybe the last thing to share with you all this morning by way of opening comments and reflections for the day, along with those two sets of qualities, the 5 spiritual faculties and the 7 factors of enlightenment, then to speak a little bit more about mindfulness. So in both of those lists, and just the simple word sati is used to refer to mindfulness. And mindfulness is something that is very broadly spread around the world. There are many different programs of different kinds. Mindfulness in schools, mindfulness in the workplace, mindfulness in the military, mindfulness in the criminal justice system. It's in many areas in various ways, shapes, and forms. And mindfulness is being sort of promoted and developed, has been seen to be incredibly helpful and beneficial in many areas. But just the word mindfulness contains a spectrum of different qualities, and so I feel it's helpful to look at that, because the most sort of common definition of mindfulness, say to use John Kabat-Zinn's words, is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the present moment and non-judgmentally. So yes, that is a kind of mindfulness, I would say. I'm not trying to be critical of John. He's a good friend, and I have a great respect for the work that he's done and the very beneficial results of his efforts since the late 70s. More than 40 years of engagement and sharing this understanding. But I do feel that's as a definition that is somewhat limited, and it doesn't really cover the dimensions of mindfulness in its fullness, and the mindfulness that is genuinely liberating, and I would say results in an unshakable quality of well-being. That's very different. That's a whole different quality. The mindfulness of just sort of paying attention on purpose in the present moment. As Ajahn Chah would often say, a cat is mindful when it's hunting a mouse. It's paying attention. It's focused on its target. The cat is looking and listening carefully to see the movement of and so it's hungry and it wants to catch the mouse. And so that is a kind of mindfulness. It's a paying attention, and it's focused. But that I would suggest that is not a kind of mindfulness that is intrinsically liberating. And so oftentimes people say, well, how can you have mindfulness being practiced in the military? Are you teaching people who are snipers to be mindful? How can you be a mindful sniper, or how can you deliberately take life in a mindful way? How does that work? So I would say that basic or sort of a kind of rudimentary kind of mindfulness of paying attention, yes, it is a kind of mindfulness, but I would say it's more closely related to just paying attention or concentrating on the task in hand, and it doesn't necessarily have any kind of moral element to it. So and there, I know this is a hot topic. There's different opinions around it, but I feel it's helpful to recognize that sometimes the word mindfulness is used for just that very sort of rudimentary kind of functional kind of paying attention, and the element of what is wholesome, what is not wholesome, that's sort of missed out altogether. So I would say that's the mindfulness of a cat hunting a mouse, or a squirrel jumping through a tree to land on the next branch. Yeah, it's a kind of an acuteness of attention. There is a concentration there, but that's not the mindfulness that is really a spiritual quality, and it is liberating. And I would say that in terms of what is the samasati, the mindfulness that's attuned to reality, to nature, that is part of the Eightfold Path, that sort of what we call right mindfulness, or mindfulness attuned to Dhamma, that necessarily involves a discernment of what is wholesome, what is unwholesome. There's an element of moral sensitivity. Well, yesterday someone was asking about hiri and ottappa, that kind of moral sensitivity. If this action is followed, is it going to be painful to another being? Is it going to be harmful? Is it going against the law? Is this based on taking advantage of somebody else? So that you could be paying attention as you hack into a computer to rob a bank, or as you mindfully deceive your partner. You kind of carefully tell them a lie about where you're going to be at lunchtime, and you're actually going off to an assignation with someone who's not your partner. So that is a paying of attention. You're concentrating on the task, but that's not a mindfulness that is liberating. So I feel it's helpful to make that distinction. That yes, there are ways that we can train attention that are not associated with anything that's genuinely beneficial or liberating, and that if if it's within the bounds of mindfulness as the Buddha is using it, or praising it as a wholesome quality, or as is being used in these lists of the 5 spiritual faculties, or the 7 factors of enlightenment, that mindfulness, that sati, necessarily involves this discernment of what's helpful, what's harmful, what's beneficial, what's not beneficial, and so that I would say that's again, that people are welcome to ask questions in the Q&A periods that we have, but I would suggest that's a very helpful distinction to make. And if it's the kind of mindfulness that the Buddha is referring to as part of the Eightfold Path, then there's necessarily that recognition of what is wholesome, what is beneficial, and what is unwholesome, what's unbeneficial as a natural part of it. So I would call that the what we can say is attuned mindfulness, or samasati, that it's in accordance with Dhamma. It's a liberating quality. So the next level of mindfulness is what we call mindfulness and clear comprehension, or mindfulness and full awareness. The Pali word for that is sati sampajanya, and that means being aware of the time, the place, the situation. So it's like not just paying attention to an object, but to the context the object is appearing in. So I'm aware that I've been speaking for a while, and aware that the clock in the corner of my computer says 10:43. So there's the sati sampajanya, the mindfulness and full awareness says, okay, I better sort of wrap up this part of the presentation, because at 10:45 we're going to be having our first sitting of the day. So that time, place, and situation, the context for what we're experiencing, Ajahn Sumedho would use the term intuitive awareness to refer to this, because you can be mindfulness and clear comprehension can imply that you understand everything that's going on, but you can be in the dark. You can not know what's going on, but you can be fully aware that you don't know what's going on. So that sense of, it's dark, I'm not sure what's in front of me, so be careful where you put your foot down. An example, yesterday I mentioned I'm slightly lame in my right foot, and that's because of my first introduction to mindfulness and full awareness, or mindfulness and clear comprehension, was my first week in the monastery in Thailand. I was very enthusiastic about Buddhism and meditation, and I decided to try to chop up some firewood, some kindling, for the villagers to use to start their fires with. There's no electricity, and so they would cook on these little fires. They would start with charcoal and wood. And so I was I grew up on a farm, so I knew how to cut wood safely, and I'd been chopping wood since I was a small child. And so I would take a stick of wood and stand it up, and then I'd bring the machete down, and then I'd stand it up, take my hand out of the way, and bring the machete down and split the wood. So then I had the thought, well, mindfulness this is really important. So even though I'm taking my hand out of the way before I bring the machete down, if I don't take my hand out of the way quickly enough, I might injure myself. So how can I find a way around this? So that I know I'll hold the piece of wood between my feet instead. That way my hand will be perfectly safe. So I can see Sue putting her making the brow clutching gesture that, oh, I know where this is going to go. And it did go that way. So I took the piece of wood between my feet, stood it up on end, mindfully, quote unquote, lined up the machete with the top of the stick, thinking my hands are perfectly safe. You know, my left hand is not in the way. And then of course I'd already learned the Buddhists do everything 3 times. So I brought the machete down, I lined it up with the top of the stick, 3 times, or did it twice. And then the 3rd time, brought the blade down, and it skipped off the top and went about 1.5 inches into my right foot. That's why I'm slightly lame in my right foot. So blood gushing everywhere, severed tendons, and me looking down at this hole in my foot going, you moron, you idiot, how could you be so stupid? So that was a very misguided kind of mindfulness, or mindfulness and not full awareness, that not recognizing here's a sharp knife coming down towards a soft foot with vigorous strength behind it. So that was an object lesson in mindfulness and full awareness, and that, yeah, don't just pay attention to the object, pay attention to the context that it is appearing in. And then the last level of mindfulness, so what I call holistic mindfulness, so I call that second level informed mindfulness. With mindfulness and the context of that it's appearing in, the objects appearing in. So the holistic mindfulness is recognizing that in this moment, what we're experiencing is sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, arising and passing away. We're looking at our computer screens or our phones or our iPads or whatever, but this moment is woven together through seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and it takes shape in this way. But this is a flow of mental impressions. It's a flow of sense perceptions and thoughts. Say the world is happening in the mind. It's known through the agency of the mind. So that holistic mindfulness is recognizing that all the different aspects of experience are woven together through the activity of the senses, the thinking mind. And so it's in a way that recognizing the phenomenological nature of experience. We each know our mind's version of the world. We move around, we say the world is out there, or we say that we are seeing the world or knowing the world, but the holistic mindfulness is that a steadiness of attention, an appreciation that what we are knowing is our mind's version of the world. It's a subjective impression, and that when we talk about the development of insight, of vipassana, then it's a lot to do with appreciating that fluid and experiential nature of reality, that the mind is putting together its version of the world, of this being, of other beings. And so it's seeing that all patterns of experience are in a state of change. No particular pattern can permanently and absolutely satisfy, and all these different patterns are not truly and completely who and what we are. So these are themes that I'll look at in a bit more detail during the day, but I'll leave my opening reflections and presentation there for now.